My name is Carl, and I am 18 years old. I reside in a small town in Texas, a place where everyone is familiar with one another's affairs, yet discussions about them remain unspoken. Life here is tranquil, characterized by a slow and steady pace, which, for the most part, suits me well. Since the age of 8, I have lived with my grandmother following the tragic loss of my parents in a car accident. She is a compassionate woman, resilient yet tender-hearted, and has endeavored to raise me with care. I owe her a great deal, but there has always been a subtle distance between us, an unarticulated barrier that I have struggled to overcome. Growing up without parents has left me with numerous questions, many of which lack straightforward answers. For years, I pondered whether I was meant to feel different or if there was something inherently wrong with me for feeling out of place in a community where everyone else seemed to fit seamlessly into their roles. It was not until I began conversing with Father Graham that clarity started to emerge. Father Graham has served as the priest at our local church for as long as I can remember. He is in his mid-40s, possessing kind eyes that appear to see right through to one's soul, and a voice that is steady and reassuring, as if he is perpetually in control. He embodies the qualities of a trustworthy individual, one who listens without judgment and speaks in a manner that instills hope. I cannot recall the exact moment our conversation began. I believe it was after a Sunday service when he noticed me sitting alone in the back pew, looking somewhat lost. He approached me afterward, his voice gentle as he inquired if everything was all right. Initially, I was reticent, unaccustomed to discussing my feelings, particularly with someone of his stature. However, he exhibited patience, never pressuring me to divulge more than I was prepared to share. Gradually, I began to confide in him, sharing my experiences regarding my parents, my challenges in fitting in, and the questions that plagued my mind. Father Graham became a mentor to me, a reliable figure to whom I could turn when life felt overwhelming. He never judged me or dictated how I should feel. Instead, he listened attentively. The guidance he provided was subtle, resembling a conversation rather than a formal lecture. It did not take long for me to recognize an inexplicable attraction to him. This feeling transcended mere admiration or gratitude. It was something profound, a truth I hesitated to acknowledge even to myself. I convinced myself it was merely a fleeting phase, devoid of significance. However, as I spent more time in his presence, it became increasingly difficult to overlook the tenderness in his gaze when he regarded me, or the warmth in his voice as he uttered my name. Everything felt too genuine to be a mere figment of my imagination. I began to ponder whether he was aware of my feelings, if he could see beyond the facade I had meticulously crafted. Then, one day, I caught him observing me in a manner that made my heart race, a look that suggested he understood precisely what I was experiencing. This realization both frightened and inspired me. For the first time, I felt truly seen, as if someone comprehended me in a way that no one else ever had. I was uncertain how to navigate these emotions, yet I could not dismiss them. Gradually, and with caution, they began to flourish, subtly intertwining with the essence of our discussions, unspoken yet always palpable. In the weeks and months that ensued, my interactions with Father Graham became a steadfast element of my existence. I found myself eagerly anticipating those serene moments in his study, particularly during the late afternoons when sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows, casting vibrant patterns on the walls. It felt like an escape from my everyday life, a sanctuary where I could express myself without fear of judgment. Father Graham possessed a unique ability to elicit my thoughts, posing questions that compelled me to reflect more deeply than I wished, yet desperately needed to. He never hurried me or pressured me to divulge more than I was prepared to share, but it was evident that he perceived more than I revealed. One afternoon, as I sat across from him in his unpretentious study, I found myself nervously toying with the edge of my sleeve, struggling to articulate feelings I could not fully express. He regarded me with his characteristic calmness, hands resting on the desk, his demeanor patient and understanding. He observed my silence today and remarked, "You've been quiet." At last, his tone was gentle yet firm. "I have been reflecting," I responded, my voice scarcely above a whisper. "About what you inquired." Leaning slightly forward, I hesitated, my gaze falling to my hands. It's about my identity. You do not consider it wrong? He shook his head, his expression softening. I believe the world is filled with individuals who attempt to dictate what is right and wrong, who strive to confine us within categories that do not always resonate. Ultimately, only you can determine what feels authentic for you. His words struck me more profoundly than I had anticipated, causing my breath to hitch. Do you truly mean that? I asked. I do, he replied simply. The atmosphere between us felt denser, charged with an unexplainable energy. I could sense his unwavering gaze upon me, and for the first time I did not look away. Thank you, I murmured, my voice quivering. Father Graham smiled, the warmth in his expression causing my heart to ache. You are not alone, Carl, he said gently. You never have to be alone. The way he conveyed this made my heart race, and I sensed the tension between us shift, becoming thicker and more palpable. I confessed, the weight of the admission heavier than I had anticipated. Father Graham nodded slowly, his expression contemplative. That is not an easy question to address, he replied softly, but it is a significant one. I looked up at him, my heart tightening as I noticed the sincerity in his gaze. What if I do not like the answer? His lips formed a faint smile as he reclined in his chair, his hands resting on the armrests. Sometimes the answers we fear are the ones we require the most, he stated. The gravity of his words enveloped me, and I felt a lump form in my throat. I believe I am different, I finally articulated, the words feeling strange as they left my mouth. Father Graham did not flinch or avert his gaze. Instead, he nodded, his eyes unwavering. Different is not inherently negative, he replied gently. It is simply different. His response took me by surprise, and I felt a mixture of relief and an indescribable emotion tighten within my chest. As I lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, I was uncertain of its meaning, yet I recognized its reality. My thoughts were consumed by him, his words, his kindness, and the way he made me feel acknowledged in a manner I had never experienced before. For the first time, I allowed myself to contemplate whether he felt the same way. It was a cool evening when everything changed. The sky was painted in hues of orange and purple, a sunset that seemed to pause in time. I was at Father Graham's home, a modest yet welcoming place just a few blocks from the church. He had invited me for dinner, a gesture that felt entirely natural given the time we had spent in conversation. We dined in the small dining room, illuminated by a single warm lamp that cast gentle shadows on the walls. The conversation flowed easily, and for the first time I felt less restrained. After our meal, we moved to the living room, where Father Graham poured us both cups of tea.